Hello, hope my microphone's working. If anybody can hear me, let me know it is or isn't. I'm going to assume it is. I think these technological things tend to work better than what I suspect sometimes, anyhow. I'm tending to go with the putting a little more trust in the fact that the stuff works, whether it works for you or against you. It can be your choice and it can be the choice of other people. That's the way decisions go. Right? Decisions are a compromise between what you want and what other people in the world want, and maybe what entities outside of the human realm want. That's matter of theory there. But anyhow, back to copyrights and me. Uh, Copyrights are all about establishing proof. And proof of what? Well, that depends on what you're trying to get the copyright of and why. Okay, proof in my case, that's the copyrights in me, is proof of my writings, paintings, spoken word things, social media stuff, music, and arts in general. Now, why is that's the problem that, okay, here's the thing with the why is because I think it holds value. I think that it's worth somebody trying to take it in some cases. Here's a little life lesson I learned about theft in general. Never, a couple times I had things taken from me as a kid growing up. I attributed it to kid stuff. Like some kid, took a stomper to school in fourth grade. Stompers, if you don't know what they were, they took a double A battery and they were these little cars that they'd just run straight ahead. Just keep going until they hit something and they'd stop. Well, stompers were kind of cool because they had these padded tires and big wheels on them like monster trucks, and they could go over a lot of terrain. So you could take your stomper out, set it somewhere, and see how far it could go and it could go over. So anyhow, Stomper wasn't working. This kid told me he could fix it, and I never got the thing back. So I was like, well, not only did he not fix it, but I lost the thing altogether. And so that was like a theft, but it was whatever. Now then, when I got to college, I had a VCR which I set up in the commons room where anybody could go and watch television, and somebody took it. And then I was wondering where it went to, and somebody told me who took it. And so I talked to an RA, and he's like, "Well, have you approached the guy about it?" And I'm like, "Not yet. I don't know what he's going to say." And he's like, "Well, first you got to do that." And so, I went and knocked on the guy's door. I was a little bit afraid of him because, like, if a guy just boldly take a VCR like that, he's a criminal, and is he a criminal just in theft or is he going to get violent too? So, anyhow, I knocked on his door, asked him about it. He said, nah, he didn't know nothing about it. But I knew he did, and he just was like dismissive, like I didn't come with force and wasn't really prepared to use any force. So I went back to the RA, and he said, well, if it was my problem, if I was dumb enough to put it in there, I should have known better. Because he didn't want to use force either, because I fight my battles if I could. So if you can't win the battle from the get go, then you need protection going in to not do stupid things. So, okay, that's a little bit of like theft. Now, I learned a lesson there, and I've considered my artwork and achievements and with artwork to be more valuable than a VCR. And I don't have the authority to go get them back when somebody else has them in the possession. Like you say, possession is 9/10 of the law. I don't know the law that well, but that's an old saying that goes around. Possession is 9/10 of it. So you're trying to keep them before they get a hold of them. Now, I think to a degree, some of this can be counteractive. If I can prove, here's the thing why I want to establish proof. I got a new thing, a new creation that I want to protect myself before I put it into my computer and stuff like that, because once it's in the computer, see, this goes on to the threat. Now, if people don't believe that there's a threat, in my case, they don't believe, I've talked to people about the threat going forward. Well, in order to address that threat of my whole life's work just being taken and basically erased from being my identity, that's the fear. Okay, well, I've seen evidence of it being taken, and I've tried to show people the evidence. Well, they don't believe the evidence, and part of what they say is they think that who would do this, who would have that technological power and energy to do such a thing and be directing it towards you. Okay, which really implies that they don't believe that there's a threat. But if they don't believe the evidence that is being taken, then they're not going to believe the proof of in my future works being mine unless I protect myself going into them. Because if I can't prove that they're being taken, then I need to concentrate on proving that they're mine before I put them out into the world whatsoever. So that's why I'm here doing this. Now, for somebody to not believe that there's a threat for it to be taken, it means that A, they've just never had something taken on that level or any level, or they don't believe in my work strong enough. Now, next thing, talk about reasoning and causes of a shadow ban. Okay, shadow ban, is it reality? Is it fact or fiction? Okay, well, that's the whole thing. It's in the shadows. Now, that implies it could be fiction or it could be fact. Do you believe in shadows? Well, what are shadows? Shadows means things that aren't clearly seen. So what goes on in the shadows, if you're not in the shadows doing it, or as a perpetrator or in the shadows of a victim, then you just don't know what goes on in the shadows. That's the whole thing. It can't be easily seen. Now, these things I've talked about here, okay, went on in the shadows. Now, if you can't believe in it like that, then think of it like this. Think of it as a secret. Now, we know on high level degrees that we have something called the Secret Service. We know that all nations participate in espionage, and there's a certain amount of secrets that just aren't known. And if you're outside of the secrets, it's speculation. If you're inside of the secrets, then you're not especially free to discuss it. You see, so we can we believe in shit? But okay, but so if you know that secrets like this exist, how can you avoid getting yourself in hot water? Okay, now that's what I want to talk about because, I'll talk about the causes of some of my personal problems because these are things that, person can learn from my mistakes. Learn from my mistakes. When I was 18, I think 18, 19, 20, those early years, early adulthood, I bought a book called The Anarchist Cookbook. Well, it was illegal to buy it, but I was told before it was handed over into my possession, your name, you need to get out your ID, is going to go on a list to the FBI. Now, at the time I was 18, 19, 20, I was in the thinking of why could they care about me? And I'm not going to do, that's a government. Like, I'm not going to present a threat like that ever. So why do I care? So, I wanted the book. Wanted the book for reasons that weren't illegal, but they were walking a fine line, but they could lead to illegal stuff. That was the whole thing with signing your paper on the name on the book, is you present yourself as a potential threat. And I was willing to do it, small-minded, young, and bought a book that carried that disclaimer right from the get-go. Maybe it was sort of a test. I mean, I know that the authors made a documentary about the book, but it could also just be a test that who's dumb enough to list themselves as a threat going into adulthood. Well, I did that. That was a lifestyle. That was a mistake, a choice I made. Because did I really learn anything off the book? No, not really. It was a lot of, a threat of the author coming after me. Now, I might hold information for somebody who wants that information, but the information I even wanted wasn't really in there. So, or it was too involved to go into, and I never really did anything based on anything I read in that book. Now, I'm not trying to give an advertisement or slander the author, either one. That's just something that got me in some trouble. Okay, then also another thing, life choice I made was specific legal psychedelics. At the time, I think still possibly, with a specific involvement in that. Without going any farther into that, that was a life choice I made, and I wasn't really I was pretty bold about it, because it's like I was addressed about it via the telephone and addressed by somebody expressing some concern that what I was actually doing and I told them it's basically none of their business because it wasn't illegal, and was very dismissive and childishly rude, uh, not knowing who you should pay respects to sometimes going into things. It was disrespectful to a degree, and it comes with youth. We all do things like we do. And then you can't change your own. I can't change my own life, and I can't regret it. I can learn from my mistakes or learn what things that sometimes, if I went back and lived my childhood over, I probably wouldn't have a childhood because I would be going into it like an adult. And some of the fun I would have had would have been eliminated too. So, I mean, I'm not saying it just is what it is at this point, but other people going forward can maybe make some decisions based on looking at the things where that I did that I'm saying might avoid you from, in this case, being able to get copyrights on stuff, because I feel that the threat possibly presented not only isn't my work in the past, but work going forward. What would it lead people into? And that gets to another thing: is I could be deemed as a lifestyle threat. That possibly the reason isn't necessarily that someone deems that my work's so valuable that they're going to be able to steal it and do something with it, but could deem it being a threat that could lead people into making grave mistakes. Because yet still, in that essence, it shows that I believe that there is value in the work, and other people are recognizing the value in it because it's entertainment value. And they possibly feel that because it's well enough artistically to be widespread, that causes a greater threat, because this widespread set of mistakes or errors that go against some things could also be widespread, be like an outbreak of a virus or something. It's mental virus, like all people live in. But so that's another reason why you got to maybe what you mistake something you can do in your life, or is to not present the possibility of your lifestyle being considered a threat. Now, that being said, okay, well, I have a counter argument to that to a degree, because people are going to do what they want to do if they want it bad enough. And if you create a forbidden artist or a forbidden set of works, you also create the glamour around it. Okay. So, like the anarchist cookbook being something you have to sign up for and the fact that it contained forbidden secrets is all part of the allure to why I wanted it to begin with. And I didn't get the allure out of but that was one thing. Now, another thing is with, Neil Cassidy, someone who I aspired to. It even carried a disclaimer in one of his autobiographies that said, jails, mental hospitals, and morgues are full of people that wanted to be Neil Cassidy. But there was only one Neil Cassidy. Nonetheless, I still aspired to him as a hero, partially because that disclaimer. Wow, that first of all, a bunch of people would try and be him and be willing to die doing it. It doesn't really make it less alluring. But see, now his life is what it was. He went to jail for something rather minor infraction. We spent about 2 years in prison for, I see now, now this goes into like speaking about injustices that have been done. And I don't want that to be the case of this. So let's just move on to other things I've done in my life that could possibly be considered a threat to getting copyrights for you and for me. Okay. Because I'm really not, you can trying to create something that you can draw benefit from, and at the same time I want it to be mutually benefiting for me, because I'm still, like I say, my battle isn't done, and I want my stuff copyrighted. Now, Okay, something else I have against me is, and speaking on this platform right here, I have YouTube violations, a violation. Well, one strike against me and other violations. Okay, now, first of all, before discussing this, I want to discuss the benefit of YouTube and what it has meant to me. Okay, well, as a child, I remember, like, I say as a child, young teen life, I played Metallica along with the scene in the old Muppets cartoon, the Disney Muppets cartoon, where Dumbo is seeing pink elephants and stuff dance around. I think he got drunk. And so he was seeing all this stuff and it was fitting with the music so well. And, I had to show friends come over, like put the tape on, try and time it out right. And sequencing the images on that screen and that music was like, my first attempt at making music videos. Well, then later, with Mario Paint, I learned how to do some animation and compose my own music and, artistic aspirations. Well, I never dreamed that there would be a platform like YouTube uh, come into existence in my adulthood that would make it so readily available for me. I thought that it would have to be necessitate me getting into uh, some sort of lifestyle of producing videos, and without choosing the option and course to get that degree or failure to be able to get to that level, either way, whichever it wasn't there, and it kind of landed on my lap. And like in my late 30s, I was maybe even 40, right about 2013, 2012, 2013. I made like my first YouTube video, and it was basically sequencing up some music by the by the New Riders of the Purple Sage to some film I shot on my camera. Well, I thought that the lyrics were sort of autobiographical. And I made the video and thought that was cool. And then I tried to post it to YouTube. Well, it could go up, but not with the music because it was copyrighted material. So that was a violation of their standards. But they're very lenient to a large degree to a lot of music, but sometimes you just don't know, because sometimes it's copyright where the artist enforces the copyright and wants it muted or altogether, or sometimes they're okay with it going out there as long as you're not claiming it's your work. If you're willing to let it be attached to their work, then they sometimes allow it. So sometimes without the skills to research the work going into it, you can just make mistakes. So some of the violations have been, mistakes. Okay. And a strike against me. Well, after learning that most stuff actually, as long as you're not trying to claim copyright for it, the other artist is willing to let it go out there with attached to you to a degree, as long as it's still going to remain their work, because then in effect you become a promoter of their work. And I learned from that firsthand with two sources. First source was carnivals coming around to town. Carnivals would play a lot of music and that you didn't hear on the radio, heavy metal in general, and some of the prizes, like the T-shirts and posters you could win, were heavy metal posters. Well, these were bands that weren't getting played on the radio. But the posters, they probably weren't getting. No, I could say they weren't getting the benefit of the sales because they were quote unquote bootlegged. So therefore, but what they were getting the benefit is notoriety to a degree. So they benefited greatly from this. Was sort of, you can't say illegal because it's sort of a don't ask, don't tell. They didn't get approval to do it, and they did get some benefit from it, but it was a mutually benefiting parasite. Now, the Grateful Dead took that sort of to the highest degree they became, say that they allowed the recordings of their concerts, and that created a lot of recordings of their concerts. So you go to somebody's house and you'd see maybe 50 tapes and then 200 Grateful Dead tapes. And it's like, wow, this band's really dominating their musical taste. Well, maybe they were, maybe they weren't. They're easily that accessible for their music. So that by making some things very accessible and allowing things that other things didn't allow, they benefited from it. So, anyhow, that's something that, now a lot of people benefit from that on YouTube, as long as you're not trying to claim it as yours. Okay, now the strike I got was, and I want to address this, is Bobby Kelly, a very good, someone who I've got a lot of entertainment from. First got familiar with him from O&A, listening to O&A recordings after the fact, and through Patrice O'Neill and Patrice O'Neill's high mention of Bobby Kelly. Bobby Kelly was someone Patrice considered a friend, and and in that regard, I maybe took liberties. Whatever. I clipped part of one of his videos that maybe, I don't know, and along with other podcasters, and I wasn't making any money off of them, or but I hadn't gotten permission either. So some of them, one of them, Joe Rogan, was getting like thousands of views, and the Bobby Kelly, I think maybe had 2 or 3 views, and then I got a strike because I'd used it without permission, and that upset me a little bit. Well, it upset me a lot, because I was like, I didn't really change the work. I just clipped it, and I thought, and it only got a few views, so I was kind of really mad about it, rightfully or wrongfully. And who knows if, see, that's like didn't get the permission going in, lack of knowledge, quote unquote ignorance. Ignorance implies, it's a funny thing to call yourself, because usually that's a major put down to be called ignorant. But if you just don't know something, that's all ignorance is. It just means you don't know. Now, to proceed forward not knowing, that can be foolishness. So now I'm going to call myself a worse thing. It was like, foolishly to a degree. I used it. And then not only that, but then when he got upset about it, I got the strike on me, then he'd post some things on Facebook, and I would, in the classic O&A sense, like through jokes, be really, aggressively confronting Bobby Kelly and putting him down really bad. Now I'm smiling to myself because I thought some of the stuff was funny. I won't repeat it. That past things are in the past and stuff like that. But it was kind of disrespectful, for one, because he's gotten a lot of. I've respected the guy, or wouldn't have clipped this video to begin with. And the strike thing may or may not have been something he did, because he's been established as a comedian for years. And he's older than I am, and I'm ancient. So he's been in this game for a long time. So to be attacked for something that, according to YouTube, he had the right to do it. And I can't say he didn't, because I didn't ask him for permission to use the video. So, now take this as a choice I made. And, I'm willing to accept that choice, but all this rolls in together for possible reasons why I could have trouble getting copyrights and stuff. So for what it is, and much respect to Bobby Kelly. Not the past disrespects and jokes are all in the past where they should be, and I still am a fan of his stuff. He's got a great podcast, YKWd, and new stand-up comedy show I haven't seen yet, but it's available, and at some point I hope to see it. And so anyhow, going forward, he's allowed, some comments on his channel, but I'm sure with close scrutiny. And, when you mess with someone who's established in any given field, you need to respect their establishment if you're wanting to get in that field and you're not established, or if you're wanting to get in any field, because it might not be the field you want to get into, but you've already, see, there's one thing about burning bridges after you cross them. That's something Patrice O'Neill talked about. Now, I'm going to talk about burning bridges you haven't even crossed, because I'm throwing out matches ahead of myself sometimes with these little, part of being entertainment can be being foolish. But if you're doing it not carefully and admittedly foolishly and burning bridges you haven't even crossed, then you can get yourself in a situation where you can't get exactly what you want. So maybe take them matches, and then it's going to take a lot of them. build you a little bridge out of them matches. Now, you know how it is. Most of these matches, just like ants going across something, a lot of the ones in the front aren't going to come to no effect. It'll just be accumulation of failed attempt, failed attempt, failed attempt, failed attempt, failed attempt, failed attempt. But eventually you might get you a little beaver's dam going on, and throw enough matches out there, you might be able to cross it. I mean, that's my hope. That's what I'm hoping for. Okay, so these are all, another YouTube violation was, a video I made called El Matador, which actually had the full bullfight in it, and that was cruelty to animals, and admittedly probably is. I mean, I don't know. It's like one of them things. I don't. It's like wow. It's like the Matador. It's a little side tangent here. The Matador is what it represents to me. Now, the Matador goes out there and it's almost like a ballerina's outfit, but doing the most masculine thing you can imagine. So what it really represents is brains over brawn, and also sort of like a what sort of like an Asian type of martial art, where it's using the aggression of the more powerful thing in your favor, because that's the Matador doesn't try and go out and he takes a certain amount of boldness, which is a characteristic attributed to masculinity. But the way if he went out there and tried to do it with brawn and being macho, he's going to die. So you keep that macho-ness inside, and outside where it uses the gracefulness of the feminine nature and does something that masculine. So anyhow, take it. Anybody see? I feel it's got a lot of what is that Taekwondo that you use that judo, judo. See, I don't know how to pronounce these things. I have some knowledge of them. Judo uses that. You use the aggression in your throws because they're coming at you hard. But anyhow, that's what I thought the value it carried in the Matador thing was. But anyhow, it got taken. Now it got taken before I got taken down. But when it went down, see, that was sort of misknowledge about the platform. Didn't realize that it could go away without my potential to download it first. So whether I can obtain the copy of that from an older file it's sort of speculation. So that's something that, I wish that I would have been YouTube would have said you can download, but you'll have that. So like I say, and the other thing about YouTube is also the benefit is, being able to put the stuff up there, and they're actually very leniency to let the artists work with other artists as long as they're willing to concede their artwork to the artist whose works they're working with. And that's, benefits of YouTube. But the other thing I haven't mentioned yet is their wide range of okay, I've thought to myself, well, I could have filled coliseums for multiple nights with the number of views my stuff's got, and the measly $130 I've taken in as a benefit from it. There's they're being a little tight with their cash, but on the other hand, they are worldwide. So to be okay, well, brother, just try and take your PC and run it around to hundreds of thousands of people, showing them these videos around the world then, because that's your other option to a large degree. Okay, so then you're well, admittedly, once again, respect to other people's successes, the platform can do something I can't do. And so it gives me, and that's what this all comes down to, the value of my work. I like it because I do it because it's fun, and also because I know other people think it's fun. We've all had that thought, hearing a song, oh, wouldn't you want so-and-so to hear this song? And you kind of dream that thing in your head. Well, some people, call it creativity or call it loneliness, dwell a lot on those types of thoughts of how other people will perceive things. So that's in the creations of my artworks. I imagine them being seen, and because I've been doing it for a long time, I've developed a certain amount of skill at it that I have respect for, and I think other people do too. And that's the fact that YouTube has let me see that I've had I don't know how many, over 100 countries I think less than 200 countries last I looked, but on the upper end of 100, getting close to 200 countries, my stuff's been seen in. And that's, I'm grateful to YouTube to allow that to happen. So, going forward, compromises. Now, also, on the other hand, because I'm not here to just, uh, to put my own self down and my own actions in the past down, because also I think I'd created like 40 videos or something like that when I got the first payment, and then they changed their policy on what it took to get more payments. And it's like, well, geez, I made those 40 videos under the concept of your previous payment plan. Now I've already done the work. Now I either have to do a whole lot more work to reach your new standard of payment, or just concede that I did all that 40 videos for that one payment. So it's kind of, I don't know if it'd be like telling a farmer, hey, if you can produce this much corn, you'll get this much money. And then the farmer goes and buys the land and he buys the tractor, and he gets in one crop and doesn't even make back the money to pay for the land or the tractor. And he's told, okay, thanks for that corn. Now next year's crop, you're going to need this. And he's already gotten a pickle. Like now he's chosen to be a farmer, and he can't get himself out of it so easy, but he can't live off the money he's making from it. So, that's a little thought that, compromise going forward, that we all got lessons to learn, not just me. And sometimes, see, now let's see, getting to the next thing, perhaps, is, well, why I should be believed is, it's not every person's confidence in themselves to a fault is considered, it can be dismissed easily as narcissism. So like for me to be talking boldly to these, high up entities as if they could learn from me can be considered narcissistic. But nonetheless, a lot of people during their lifetime are considered narcissistic. And, it could be considered narcissistic for me to say this, but okay, Van Gogh only sold one painting in his lifetime, but he's considered one of the greatest. He's one of the most well-known artists in the world. And just, I think, 12 years after he was dead, his paintings were going for millions of dollars. That's a long story, and I know it because I studied it. And the narcissistic part on my end could be comparing me to Van Gogh, but to knowledge of Van Gogh, not so much knowledge of his paintings, was not the hugest fan of his artwork, but I'm a fan of him through his writings to his brother Theo. There's like 900 of them available. And another one of the great things that the internet has done is giving me access to things like, this is on .org, was able to read all these letters from over 100 years ago, 140 years ago or so, that he's writing to his brother Theo and telling what his thoughts on stuff, and like getting no affirmation back from the world, that he was just dismissing him, and he just kept on and on and on and paying it up till the very end. The questionable end, that's a whole nother matter of dispute. But anyhow, so failure or not, he's achieved a great success. And some of the great things, the narcissistic thoughts were, mind you, the man went to a mental hospital, is that he believed that he said it. He's like, I know I will be regarded as a great artist in the future. And nobody's telling him he's right. The man ended up in a mental hospital. And so, but nonetheless, he was right, and the whole world was wrong. So he's a king narcissist of artist to a degree, and it's narcissistic for me to compare myself to him. But not all narcissists. It could be sometimes a narcissist is right. But anyhow, it's sort of so. Anyhow, now why should I believe? Also, because I just confessed to you a lot of mistakes I made. I was very honest about violations that, and things that had got me into trouble. So therefore, when I talk about things like copyright and reasons I want for my work to be copyrighted, there's a certain amount of level of honesty I've tried hoping to establish, and establishing honesty takes honesty. And sometimes honesty can't be all beneficial in your favor. You have to confess mistakes to a degree, because what I want is, okay, it to be acknowledged that there's educational value to my work and therefore reason for it to not be blocked, not for people to not stand in the way of it. Now, the educational value, I'm going to refer to a biblical term. It says in the Bible that some refers to someone being referred to as a byword. Now, what that means is that the very mention of their name is a warning, like, oh, that guy is a warning of what not to do, And so if that's what I'm judged to be, I'm willing to be. I want to laugh with people. Humor is a necessary thing in life. It's a very enjoyable thing, anyhow. It's something that we all enjoy, and I would like to laugh with the world at the humorous things, but I'm willing to be laughed at in order to have my life not be wiped off the record altogether. So if I must be considered just purely a lesson of what not to do, then so be it, but don't block me from being out in the world and as I am, because I the honesty and the willingness and what I want for people is enjoyment and the end, and if it means purely at my but that's not what I want. Like I say, I want to I want to enjoy life with the world, but at least don't erase me from it. So, okay, and speaking of that on a biblical term, it says that Cain was marked for a crime he committed, that anywhere he went, he couldn't really escape that. But not only him, but his descendants couldn't escape that. And it went all the way to, I want to say the man's name was Lamech. I could be wrong. You might have to check this out yourself, where he was the father of artists. And he had the mark of Cain because he committed the same crime that Cain did. So it said all his descendants would have it. Well, so what does that mean? Okay, well, that I don't know. I have just linked this being marked because that's what I feel like, being why I could be shadow banned or blocked or have my copyrights violated or have the ability to establish copyrights being withheld is being marked, being a marked man. Now, I'm not saying I'm marked because of Lamech, but I'm saying that there is biblical mention of that happening to people who could, anyhow, carried the mark. And, lots of artists have to travel around and like Cain did, move around the world and stuff like that. So, but then also, but that was all tied to a crime. Now, King David, to a degree, when he was fleeing from his own son who become king in his wake, he was considered a byword for a while. People who saw him was like, oh, that's David, whose life has become so shameful. He's lost his kingdom and he lost it all, to his own son. So it's like, wow, what a failure. What a drastic, you couldn't look him straight in the eye without, so much gossip had been spoken about him that you couldn't look in his eye without thinking of all that gossip and pretending that you didn't know about it. So you just duck them all together. So that was where King David was at for a while. So he was a man who was considered as a byword, where it was actually of no justice that all this was taken from him. Now, he wasn't without mistakes, but his mistakes didn't directly lead to that treatment. It was sort of, and he regained it all. So, so that's the next thing, and it's saying it's not over till it's over. And that's the battle I'm fighting, is I'm the one throwing the matches without lighting them into the stream and knowing a lot of them are getting washed away, but trying to build these bridges. Now, I'm just talking to the stream. Don't wash them away. Let them float. Let them float and build up. because that's all I'm really asking from you. Now, as far as the other side, maybe reaching out and building a bridge across, that's a hope too. We can all hope. And that's a hopeful man I am. And now hopefulness is uh, contagious. So that's another reason why I could be shadow banned, because spreading this hope amongst the lowly people of the world, and I mean lowly in financial bracket, not just, violations or foolishness, just, lowliness to uneducated people is like, there could be higher up thoughts, could be speculation here. Like say, we're talking when anytime you're talking about shadows, you're talking about things you don't know, but person could be kept out of entertainment field because if everybody dedicates too much time to entertainment and entertaining others on social media, then there might not be directing enough energy towards things that designers of platforms and people in the entertainment business or people in government believe is most beneficial to society as a whole. So there could be a factor like, it's a good thing that you block them because there's nothing really good can come of it. But let's be fair, let's be fair that like who's breaking the law if that's the case, who's and the laws are put in place, to protect the speculation, protect people from judgment, partially to protect people from being a victim, but also to protect the citizen from being judged in this country, to be judged predeterminately, to be like, we know bad's going to come from them, so we're going to block these options. Where, the founding fathers of this country promised life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Now, granted, these platforms are not just American, so they span that out. But like, just think of what's right and wrong in that regard, and the greater thing that and it's not over, so it's over. So the next one is who I am as the beggar, because that's what it comes down to. Like if anyone who's worried about people aspiring to me so much, then consider me in the role as the beggar, as I, have. If you're familiar with my artwork, if can attach that identity to myself. People don't aspire to be a beggar. They don't, but no. So therefore, I'm not trying to draw the attachment to it, but by being a positive force in that, because believe it or not, I strive towards righteousness. Now, I've tried to show that in honesty. Okay. And so, like I say, it's not over till it's over, and what to expect from me in the future. I can just tell you my strive and, in declaring things I have learned, but also not cutting off myself from my identity in the past, because that's how I learned the things I know. And that's how these truths can be known to be truth, because I'm attaching myself to what I'm claiming. See, that's where I separate myself from narcissism, because they say a narcissist believes that in all these accomplishments, where I'm like, as far as success levels, the beggar, because that's what I'm still, what this basically is, as trying to express a willingness for compromise with the major entities that I've had this, could be considered imaginary friction between, or whatever. Like I say, I know what I've seen, and I know that there's been an attempt to instill the thought of thievery, to let me know that I'm not attached to my works, and let them not get out there the way they have. Now, that's what I'm telling you I know, and not expecting you to know that to be true. So that's why I would talk about going forward is protecting my work before it comes out. Like I said, I've got a new work that I want to protect before I put it out there. And my thoughts is, when starting with this live stream, was performing it live. But I decided to go into this first to see if it will even work, see if my microphone's even working. Maybe this is just me talking and nobody hearing any of it. Or maybe it's me talking and some people hearing it, but the people that are hearing it have the power to block it from going out any farther. So that's the beggar here, the willing to express compromises, because the future is what matters. It's not. And another thing I've done is, and a worry that people may have, is the revealing of secrets. Okay, even people who believe that I tell the truth believe that, if you got secrecy established in all the way up to the top, and we all know that there is such a thing as a secret service, that people believe in secrets being kept. So, and even amongst thieves, there's the idea of snitches or bitches or whatever, So there's this level all throughout mankind that nobody likes somebody that tells something, because, oh yes, we all love hot gossip, but is the gossiper themselves desirable? So, I mean, that's another thing that I have to establish myself to not be. And that's what I'm trying to do in this, is discuss going forward is, as a person who is wanting to do the works and have my works be the works, not so much telling the wrongdoings of other people, but the right doings I'm trying to do. So this is addressing the judges of me, and what do we want to choose here? Even if it's, to block me based on the fear of me telling secrets, I can't eradicate suspicion of the future when I'm admittingly going to saying that I probably will fail from what I strive to be, because I strive for righteousness. And even in the holy text I read, that righteousness is going to be, you're going to fall short of it. That's the testimony, and I mean, without getting into the testimony, because nobody wants to hear me testify right now. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But anyhow, I'm suspecting that that's me speaking words, quoting Holy Scripture is not going to benefit me right now, because that would be just considered a higher level of narcissism. So I'm discussing like you would in trial, is to, who carries the burden of proof? Okay, well, I can't prove I'm going to be righteous in the future, but how can anyone else prove I'm going to be unrighteous? And so anyhow, it comes down to a choice that you'll be making. But if your fear is too much truth will be told, then consider what you're really choosing there. You're choosing for the world to be divulged and neck deep in lies, or you're that afraid of the truth. What should we really be afraid of here? Okay, so that's just one thing I can give assurance of, uh, based on what I've seen in the past, is for me and for the judges of me and for the world, surprises will happen one way or another, because that appears to be out of the hands of mankind altogether. So with that hope and that assurance of hope and that promise, and don't surprises make life more beneficial one way or the other? I mean, surprises will come. And with that, I will end this stream. Have a good night and goodbye for the moment.